the score wouldn't tell you last night that the Cleveland Cavaliers were severely outmatched against the Boston Celtics. But when you look at a final that saw them lose, what was it, 117 to 113 in Boston on Wednesday night, it just wasn't a good matchup for Cleveland that I unfortunately think may have officially finalized the separation between the contenders in the East and the pretenders. Not to say the Cavaliers are a full on pretender, but there were some serious causes for concern last night, especially with the scare that we had from all-star guard Donovan Mitchell, who, again, it seems like that groin injury is really nagging him on more than it's been led up to until this point.
Mitch, the first quarter and second quarter, really the first half, the Cavs came to play. The Cavs were neck and neck with Boston. This is a team that they've had 2 overtime games with this season, and they were 2-0 against previously. Then the third quarter happened where they were outscored 41-26. And really that was it, Mitch. That was the difference in the game. The Cavs in the third quarter got outplayed so bad. They only had 4 rebounds. Mitch, the Cavs are known for having 2 7-footers to meet at the rim. Like if you're driving offensively, that alter shots and then clean up the boards. And last night, the Cavs were not able to do that. Jared Allen and Evan Mobley were bullied last night. Now, Robert Williams for the Celtics did not play in the first 2 meetings earlier this season against the Cavs, in which the Cavs won both. And he looked like he made a difference last night for sure, because now Al Horford got to go back to the power forward position. And by the way, Al Horford, I mean, I can't believe this dude. I feel like I can't believe he's still playing every single time I see him on the floor. 8 of 10 last night, 6 of 8 from 3, has 23 points to go alongside the all-star small forward Jason Tatum with 41. But I agree with you. I think last night kind of showed you the separation between the Cavs and the Celtics. And it also showed you, now both benches last night, Mitch, I believe had 12 points off the bench, or excuse me, the Cavs had 14 points off the bench and the Celtics had 12. So the benches weren't really a factor. Donovan Mitchell, 44 points, Jason Tatum, 41. The Cavs, though, Mitch, it is going to be apparent here down the stretch, especially in the playoffs, that the Cavs win their first round series in advance to take on the likes of either the Celtics or the Bucks. The Cavs messed up at the trade deadline. At the same time, I don't know who they could have gotten, but Jason Tatum took over a game last night, which, Mitch, he had scored a lot against the Cavs in previous games, but it was never effortlessly. Last night, it looked effortless. 13 of 21 from the field, 4 of 6 from 3 for 41 points. They don't have a player that can guard Jason Tatum. Isaac Okoro was too small. Jason Tatum could shoot over him. And as soon as we put Evan Mobley on him, Tatum would either drive past the big or create separation or rise for a jump shot. And we saw this before with Kevin Durant when he was on the net still. The Cavs had nobody. Granted, I understand Kevin Durant is pretty much unguardable because of the size and athleticism he has. But my point still stands. You had nobody to really contest a shot with him. And right now, the Cavs have nobody to contest a shot of Jason Tatum. Donovan Mitchell tried last night. He's still too small. Okoro's too small. LeVert does not play great defense. And Mobley and Allen, Mitch, this is not a knock on them. It's just pure fact. They're too slow. They are big men for a reason. They cannot switch out onto a small forward, a player of the likes of Jason Tatum. And ultimately, I think that is what the difference is between the Cavs and the Celtics and the Bucks and the Cavs, is we are missing a true 3 and D, or more so just lockdown defender at the 3 position on this Cavaliers team. And unfortunately, if we met Boston, as confident as I was going into the game last night, I don't have much confidence anymore because I don't know how they possibly stop Jason Tatum after what I saw last night.
Yeah, I as far as messing up at the trade deadline, I don't know. I agree with you in the sense of I don't know who we could have gone for, and especially who we could have given up. You couldn't unload Karis LeVert as his stock wasn't at its peak that you wanted it to be able to be confident enough to make that trade. The Kevin Love thing, we just basically just bought him out because his stock was so low, and you don't want to give away too much because that could disrupt some serious chemistry that we've seen. When it's good in this season, it can be great. But I think it's just more of so of a case of youth right now. I mean, do look at some of these things here, and I'm pulling up this ESPN piece from Tim Bontemps. It's mostly just these Cavaliers, this core of Mitchell, Garland, Allen. I even throw a Coro in there, and then Mobley as well. They don't just have a lot of great uh, contending experience. Mitchell Donovan's the only one that's ever gotten to the second or gotten past the first round of the postseason, if you don't count Kevin Love, because he's not on the team anymore. These guys have only made it to the play-in tournament essentially. And I think it's more so a case of just still trying to grow as you still have three juggernauts in the East that have so much playoff experience. I mean, you've seen Philadelphia make it far in the playoffs. Boston's made the finals. Milwaukee's won the finals. These are just the three roadblocks specifically that you have to get past. And it's possible to get past these roadblocks before. I mean, we saw a few years ago Atlanta getting past Philadelphia in a 7-game series to make the conference finals. Whoever thought that would have happened, but it did. Now, to be fair, I think that the Cavaliers are now essentially playing for the 4 spot, as we kind of talked about on the last podcast. You still have the Knicks in there as the matchup. I disagree with you in the sense that I would much rather play Brooklyn. I mean, I know you didn't say it specifically, but you said, oh, it doesn't matter if it's the Knicks or Nets. I'm still confident. I would much rather face the Nets than the Knicks in a first round series matchup because I think the Knicks can be legitimately scary. I don't think it's a gimme if the Cavaliers face them in the first round of the playoffs. And then you have teams like Miami, Atlanta, and Toronto who are still considerably behind the Cavaliers. So it's really they're playing for 5 and 6. You're focusing on that matchup where I think the lowest the Cavaliers could fall is 6. But then you have to see who could potentially rise up. Could Atlanta under Quinn Snyder be the team that gets things going? Miami, I know they just lost last night, but they still have a quality team that can play some good defense at times. I can't really put Toronto and Washington in there because I don't think those are the teams that can really necessarily be competitive. And we saw the Cavaliers beat Toronto the other night, so I don't think that's the case. It's really a 4-man stave off at this point rather than a race for Cleveland. It's like, okay, just keep these teams below us. And you just have to find your own footing right now. Although the Knicks are the hottest team out of the 4 so far, they have won 7 games in a row, but that's nothing compared to the 16 games in a row that the Milwaukee Bucks have posted. They're 27-5 at home. That is the second or the third best record, or one of the top 3 best home records in the league. They're still 18-12 on the road. They can get things done. They're one of the higher scoring squads, and they've overtaken Boston now. And it really just feels like this team, you don't want to say they're peaking early because I don't think that's the case. I think they're peaking at the exact right time with only 20 some games left in these up until the playoffs. But it's it's getting to a point where I'm like, okay, does any team have a chance to take down the Bucks if they make it into a second round or conference final matchup?
I don't know if a team does. Keep in mind last year, Mitch, the Celtics beat the Bucks without Chris Middleton. Middleton got hurt and went down. If Middleton plays in that series, I ultimately believe the Milwaukee Bucks would have went to the NBA Finals.
Yeah.
But he didn't. And I do believe that experience is extremely valuable for the Celtics now to a point where it makes a difference if those two teams match up. I also believe that home court is an even bigger factor now for Milwaukee in the East because Boston simply does not play well in Milwaukee, at least this season, looking back at years past. I know they won last year in the Eastern Conference Finals, getting a couple games there, but that, like I mentioned, that was also without All-Star Chris Middleton. I just cannot believe the fact they've won 16 in a row. Giannis has been in and out a couple games with a couple nagging injuries. These guys, I mean, everybody's banged up at this point, Mitch. I think it's fair to say everybody has a player banged up on every single team. But Milwaukee is starting to really put themselves up there to remind you how good they are when they're at full strength. And I agree with you. I'd rather play the Nets than the Knicks, but there are still 20-some games for certain teams. The Cavs have 17 games remaining. Their next game is against the Pistons on Friday night, and they will welcome in Boston on Monday night. We'll have to wait and see how those go, but keep in mind March Madness will end before the NBA playoffs start. Could the Knicks be peaking too early? Possibly. Could they also be catching fire at the right time? Absolutely. Because every game down the stretch right now for a team like the Cavs, the Knicks, the Nets, the Heat, anybody in playoff contention or play-in contention literally matters. So they're peaking at the right time. You just have to hope that maybe they would not be as hot as they are right now, winning 7 in a row. Because the way they're doing it, Mitch, they are just absolutely blowing teams out. I mean, they blew out the Nets last night, and as well as the Nets had played after that trade, Mitch, they've now lost 4 in a row.
Yeah.
And so now you wonder if they're coming back to the pack. I also want to throw out a quick thing. I think the Bulls and the Pacers are going to be the 2 teams fighting for that last playoff spot. I don't believe in the Wizards. I don't think the Wizards will be able to hold on. The Bulls with the win last night. The Pacers have won 2 in a row, and they had 2 big wins. They won at Dallas the other night, holding off Luka and Kyrie.
Yeah.
I think one of those 2 teams will be the team that fights with Washington for that 10 spot and ultimately will overtake them, but we'll have to wait and see. I mean, Chicago's only 1 game back, Indiana 2 games back of Washington. But to your point of the Cavs being in the 4 seed right now, they are 5 up on Miami, who holds the 7 spot. However, they still play 2 more times in South Beach, which has been kryptonite for the Cavaliers over the past decade, really. But they're also 6.5 up on Atlanta, and then Toronto, Washington. There's really no realistic possibility they would be able to get back and fight with the Cavs to hop up above them. But it's going to be intriguing now down the line because the Cavs have some big time games remaining in the last 17. All I know, Mitch, they have to handle business against these bad teams. You play Charlotte, I believe, 2 or 3 more times. LaMelo Ball out for the season. You have to take care of business there.
Yeah.
You have to take care of business of the Chicago Bulls, who you're better than when you play them this month or in April. You also have Orlando twice. They're not a good basketball team. You have some good teams in there remaining. Boston 1 more time, Miami twice, I believe Milwaukee and Philly. Those are going to be big time games. But if the Cavs just beat the teams they need to beat and should beat, I believe they'll be held in the 4 spot firmly, unless the Knicks just never lose again this regular season.